Welcome to It's Always Sunny in Neo Tokyo. As today, our brand new fleet of patrol laborers gets ready to discuss this. I don't know. Hi, I'm Red. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
I'm Lugia, reporting for duty.
I am Patty, also reporting for duty.
Yes, today we're going to be talking about an anime OVA, which we haven't done in a while. Mobile Police Patlabor, specifically the early days OVA. And we'll also briefly be talking about the first movie, both directed by Mamoru Oshii. But before we get into that, I just want to, briefly pay tribute to Robert Redford, who passed away this week, the week of us recording. He is probably one of the biggest actors of his generation, and he's also the guy who founded the Sundance Film Festival, named after arguably his most famous character, the Sundance Kid from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Yeah, he was in Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, The Sting. He did a lot of movies with Paul Newman. He was in Jeremiah Johnson, The Candidate, The Natural, 3 Days of the Condor, The Great Gatsby, the 70s one, All the President's Men, Sneakers, some recent ones he did was The Old Man and the Gun, and he was Alexander Pierce in the MCU. So he was in that too. Oh, he's also very notable whatchamacallit, director. He's not just like a beloved actor, but he directed Ordinary People. That was his first film, and that movie is like one of those like really acclaimed Oscar films. One like got nominated for six, won like four. Did Quiz Show and a couple other movies you might have heard of. So yeah, rest in peace. So Mobile Police Patlabor is a mecha series. Mecha is basically kind of like a genre in Japan where it centers around these giant robots. And it was created by Headgear, which is a sort of like a art collective created consisting of the manga artist Masami Yuki, the director Mamoru Oshii, screenwriter Kazunori Ito, and the mecha designer Yutaka Izubuchi, and character designer Akemi Takada. So they're like sort of the collective like creators of the Patlabor franchise, and they've done a lot of work with Mamoru Oshii too, because I believe a good chunk of them worked with him on Ghost in the Shell. Kazunori Ito is also like the guy who wrote Ghost in the Shell with Oshii, who directed it. And yeah, so I guess we're gonna mostly be focusing on those two. This franchise is pretty big. It's got a manga, a TV show, two OVAs, three feature-length movies, and a bunch of like live action stuff too. That's just the animated stuff. Today we're gonna be talking about the early days OVA, which is the first thing made in the series, and then we're gonna talk about the movies. All the animes are pretty much helmed by Oshii. So I guess to give a brief sort of rundown, the story takes place in the near future of 1998. Yeah, obviously didn't turn out that way, but yeah, we follow these robots called Labors. They're mostly like these heavy construction vehicles, but recently, kind of like I'm sure Lugia probably noticed some parallels with like Mega Man X, where like robots are kind of like going a bit haywire sometimes. So they created
They've
these
gone Maverick.
yes, they created these patrol labors or pat labors, as opposed to patrol cars, to combat the crimes and terrorists dealing with labors. Some terrorists hijack these vehicles too. The story arcs usually revolve around the Tokyo Metropolitan Special Vehicles Section 2, Division 2, with Noe Izumi as the main protagonist. But it's an ensemble cast for the most part. We just sort of followed this division, throughout the years. This is basically like when the division started. The movie is kind of like we follow a much more serious role because for the most part, despite Mamoru Oshii's reputation for sort of esoteric films in the West, he is also very interested in comedy. A lot of people don't in the West don't know this because for most part they know him for Ghost in the Shell, but he got his start making sitcoms. His very first project was called Urusei Yatsura. That's how I could describe it. It's kind of like a Mork and Mindy or Alf type thing. This alien girl, lands on Earth and is very bewitched in a way because like it's sort of like domestic life of this like crazy magical alien princess. And yeah, Pat Labor's I guess almost like I'm not gonna say it's a transition point of a series because he did make Angel's Egg, which is a very esoteric film years before this, but this is sort of like the big sort of transition point of his career because he made Pat Labor and Long Life to the Ancestors, these two OVAs, and these are basically his last forays into comedy. And then slowly every single thing he's made like since this has gotten more and more serious, including the Patlabor movies with Patlabor 2, which we won't be talking about today. But Patlabor 2 is basically just like a Ghost in the Shell type movie. It's very similar to like Metal Gear Solid or something like that. But today we're just gonna be talking about the comedies. So, what did you guys think of the series?
Going into this, I expected it to be like a typical workplace comedy at a police station, and it is. But I was also surprised to see that it takes itself pretty seriously in that like it deals with themes of, terrorism and later on civil war. And I was like, "Oh, all right, I was expecting just a lot of yucks and shenanigans, but all right, things are getting pretty serious." To the point
Yeah.
where in the middle there are two episodes that are very different and I was kind of thrown off because
Yeah.
there's an episode that's pretty much the abyss, and then the episode after that is like a Scooby-Doo mystery, and I was like, what are we doing?
Episodes 3 and 4, more so 4, felt like filler. It was definitely a distraction from the main plot. Not saying it's like bad, mind you, but you could remove episode 4 from the OVA listing and you wouldn't really lose anything. I do have some problems with episode 4, but I'll get into that later.
No, remember this is sort of meant to be like a sampler thing because the movies decided to take more of like a serious route, but after this OVA got made, alongside the movies which were more serious, they also made like a 47 episode TV show, and like that's very episodic. It's very like classic sort of a thing. So I guess they kind of want to show that like this how versatile this franchise could be, where you could have like these more serious terrorist plots, but also just kind of goofy nonsense.
But I feel like at
I
that
guess
point, you kind of take it too far.
I guess like the biggest comparison I can point to is something like MASH, where like it's a combination of like silly hospital shenanigans, but every once in a while you'll have an episode with like a really serious storyline and like no
Yeah, I
laugh
think
track.
that's what it was like trying to be.
All right, so I respect it in that sense, but it did kind of leave me feeling conflicted on what the intended tone was supposed to be. But like overall, I enjoyed it fine.
I guess if you guys like the comedy of it, I'd recommend you guys check out the shows. And if you like the more serious stuff, I guess check out the movies. I remember when I watched this, I was very surprised by because like the first two episodes are like it almost feels like a parody of like Mecha in a way, because almost a lot of the jokes are kind of about how inconvenient operating these like devices would be realistically almost,
They're
or
not even
like
Transformers. They're just straight up giant mechs. They can't turn into a car to go under a bridge. They got to find a way
And they have
around
to,
it.
and they don't have a gun manually implanted into their arm. They have to actually reach into a holster to grab one.
I think that's actually a common thing with mecha. I've seen Gundam Unicorn, and they do the same thing
Really?
where they have like just straight up weapons that the mechs use instead of having it be a part of the mech itself.
the transforming thing is also like not a common thing in Mecha. That's just like the Transformers series and the anime that Transformers was like loosely based off of Braves.
Well, yeah, I don't watch much mecha. If you couldn't
Yeah.
tell, then.
The best way I could describe it is like, so a lot of mecha series were like inspired by Starship Troopers, like the original book, where it's basically just like giant armor. So that's kind of like what mecha is. It's basically just giant armor. It almost seems like this series, like, because I know like the third episode is kind of riffing on the Abyss, and I remember that sort of like put the series in perspective for me, where I was like, okay, so it almost feels like a series is like, what if like Godzilla attacks happen, and then like they built like this like systems like and deal with it, but also like how often are those attacks going to happen? So like a lot of times like people are just kind of waiting around, just looking for stuff to do. And like yeah, I thought the first episode was really funny, where it's like, oh, I want to practice shooting, and then like they have to like go through all this like red tape, and then be like, oh, sorry, but like the shooting range is booked. It was like, oh, well, can we practice this? It's like, you're gonna need a special order, the shotgun weapons. And it's like,
You can only practice once a year.
and then like yeah, episode 2, where they have to deal with like the existing city infrastructure, like what the city wasn't built for Mex with like these labors in mind, so they have to like they don't know how to like, get around bridges and shit. Even though like it's technically a sci-fi world, it definitely feels like maybe that's why they decide to set it only 10 years in the future, because they're like, what if like if we built like megas like now, start building them now, we obviously would not be able to design our cities, with this shit in mind. And I guess they kind of want to do comedy with like the inconvenience of it all. But for the most part, like they do like ultimately take the premise seriously, and like why something like this exists. If more mechanized the world would be, obviously like people would hijack it for sinister purposes and whatnot. And
Or in some cases, the mechs just hijack themselves.
yeah, because obviously like the machines can malfunction, especially if they're more advanced. And yeah, and I did think it was interesting how they sort of combine like the mech stuff with like regular police stuff, like like defusing bombs, or like all that stuff. I haven't seen the Big O, but I imagine it's something similar there, because the Big O is kind of like a detective series, but there's also like a giant robot in there. Want to go to like specific episodes? Any specific episodes you guys want to talk about?
Yeah. So for the most part, I really enjoyed my time with Patlabor, with only two exceptions. Those being episodes 3 and 4, more so 4, as I said before. Episode 3 took a lot away from what made episode 1 and 2 special. It didn't really have much mech combat, which is fine. If you want to get deep with the characters, like, I'm okay with that. You're going to have to sacrifice some action scenes for that. And the mystery of the monster is kind of cool, I guess. But it's implied that one of the patrol officers, I think his name was Yamazaki, was related to that monster because it had like a human face and it stared at him for like God knows how long. But they don't follow up on that. I don't know if this is something the other shows or the movies do, but it's just kind of a loose thread that went nowhere. Like, did his father get experimented on and that's why he turned into a monster? Is that even his father to begin with? Or is it just someone he knows? I don't know. Is there actually an answer for that?
I don't even know if like I'm not even sure if like it was meant to be related, just like meant to sort of be like an unsettling thing to make you like think about the monsters more than just a monster.
I thought it was because in episode, I think it was episode 5, before he leaves to get to work, he prays to his deceased father. So I thought maybe there was a connection between that and the monster. But again, I'm not sure. Maybe the other material within the series like explains that. But that's fine. It's meant to be an unsatisfying ending. They even say at the end there was an unsatisfying ending. But then there's episode 4, which was unsatisfying for all the wrong reasons. Because throughout the entire episode, it's supposed to be like this sort of ghost mystery of an incident that happened 2 months ago, and a dead girl is just terrorizing people, trying to...
It's a Scooby-Doo episode, basically.
Yeah. And it's trying
Minus
to be like a commentary on the
assault
use of guns and
and the
power.
kids.
And that would be fine if it didn't abruptly end the way it did, because the final scene is just everybody in the force explaining every little incident that happened and all the tools that were used to cause like all these quote unquote ghost sightings. It's not like a mystery that gets unraveled time after time. It's just all dumped on you at the very end, and I didn't like that at all. I don't know. Am I the
what would you guys
minority on
say?
that?
Not that
No, I feel that.
I mean, I remember when like episode 4 was like happening. I legitimately like forgot about it. I was like, I did not remember this episode. I think like I just kind of erased it from my memory because it's so
Again,
inconsequential.
it feels like filler. You could remove it and you'd lose nothing. I just didn't care for it. It's not bad. It's just kind of nothing.
Part of me kind of wishes, since it's like mainly like an ensemble piece with like 8 or so main characters, a part of me wishes that each episode was focused on a different member of the team. And they kind of do that ish, at least for the first few.
What would you say is your favorite episode? I guess since we talked about at least.
It's kind of cheating, but the two-parter episodes 5 and 6, where they had Godo and Kai like face off against each other, and it was like this big climactic moment where nuclear war was like about to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's kind of obvious. That was like the most like intricate storyline. What did you think of the, I guess, finale?
Episode 7.
The last episode? Yeah.
Initially, when I started watching it, I'm like, is this a time jump past the nuclear threat? Because if so, it's a little weird how it's just like another day in the life of second unit. Because initially I thought, oh, you could probably just put this anywhere, but no. We've seen how these relationships between the cast has evolved over time, and I think it's just a way to get us to understand how far we've come from where we started. The stakes are definitely not as high, but for what it was, I thought it was a good episode.
This is meant to be more of like a denouement, than a climax, because the climax already happened. Yeah. If you're really in a rush, watch the first 2 episodes, which kind of like establish it in terms of like comedy. Maybe a 3rd episode, so you can like get an idea of like just how episodic the series could get if you want to check out the TV show. And then 5 and 6 is the climax, and then 7 is a sort of denouement. But yeah, you can, I guess, skip episode 4 and you won't really miss out on anything. Patty, is there any highlights that you want to talk about?
Actually, yes. So actually, to start, can we talk about the animation for a minute? I was very impressed with the way this show looks. Like, I think if you took a screenshot or like a few second clip from somebody and said like this is a movie, they'd believe you.
I've
Yeah.
always dug like
OVA.
80s, like late 80s anime aesthetics, and this definitely filled that void for me. I did notice
So,
like an animation error though in episode 3 where you know the detective guy, I forgot his name, but he's got like the dot eyes, like the solid
Yeah.
black eyes. In the initial scene where they're doing the underwater exploration to find the monster, his head is just really fucking big for no reason. And normally what Patlabor does is like sometimes for comedic or intense scenes they use a fisheye lens, but he's the only character out of 3 in that scene that is affected by it. So everyone else looks normal and he just has a big fucking head.
I think that might have been like a gag. I don't think that was an error.
Why would it
Yeah.
be a gag though? Like there's nothing in the scene that's supposed to be comedic.
I don't know. Oshi just like likes to do some weird quirks sometimes, but I'm not sure that was an error. I think they
I
just
think a lot
wanted
of
to.
the I think a lot of the visual comedy is like what really sold me. Like the
Um,
posing, the expressions. Like I like the captain. He just always looks like he like is just done with everybody's shit and doesn't want anything.
Hugoto, right?
Yeah.
yeah. OVAs, they're technically TV shows, but they're not really TV shows. They're funded more like short films. OVAs tend to have like much better animation quality than TV. So I do just want to let you know that the TV show is probably gonna look a bit cheaper than this because yeah, obviously the way TV shows work is like they release like an episode a week. And this is more of like once a month. You know, sometimes like
I was about
more
to
than
ask,
multiple
was
months.
this like Blue Submarine #6 where it was like 6 months apart or something?
Not 6 months apart. It was more like for the most part it was monthly, except the last episode, which I guess had like an extended pause. But for the most part, the show was like every month or every 2 months. So yeah, the animation quality is definitely much more akin to like a film than it would be a TV show. And that's kind of like how stuff is like tiered out in Japan, where like the cheapest stuff is TV, second, and then like the most expensive is film, and then like the OVA is like somewhere in between.
I will say my one criticism of the animation is that I do wish there were some more action scenes.
I feel like in the OVA specifically, you get like one action scene with the mechs in most episodes, with the exception being episode 4, which has none.
If you look at like, I'm trying to like think of like other TV shows, like Powerpuff Girls. Like for the most part, like there'd be like one action sequence at the end. Well, maybe not Powerpuff Girls, but like Dexter's Lab or whatever.
I'm just saying, like maybe one or two more would have been nice.
Like per episode.
Not per episode, but like in general.
I was gonna say I thought the I guess the character acting, because like I feel like a lot of the there's like a lot of moments where like anytime a character's talking, there's like a lot of funny faces or expressions they make that really stood out to me. Where like I feel like if I just like pause on like there's this like one scene where guys like talk on the phone, and he's like there's so many funny faces he's doing like while on the phone. But, like I feel like if I just pause, looked at every frame, it'd be like pretty hilarious.
Do we have anything else you want to say about the visuals?
You said you had something?
Actually, it's not related to the visuals, but it is related to the presentation. Can we talk about the music for a second? I don't really focus on the background music of like TV shows, but this OVA has some great music, and I'm not just talking about like the opening theme, which is great in itself, but even like
Yeah.
the background music, like the background score during scenes, like the ambience of it, like
Yeah,
I
80s
don't know, like
Japanese like music, I think is very cozy to me, which is weird because like I feel like when I think of like 80s music in like America, like it's very like cold synths, but here I don't know, they make the synths feel kind of cozy.
it was a bit odd in some places. Like there's an action scene, like there's a chase scene where the music playing in the background is like a woodwind piece and occasionally an electric guitar, and I'm like a bit strange, but you know what? It slaps. I'll take it.
Is that it for the OVA?
I believe. Well, do you guys have a favorite moment in the entire
Um,
OVA?
I don't know.
Not a specific episode,
uh,
just like a scene.
It really cracked me up when she's trying to get past the bridge. That
Yeah.
was just like very funny. Where it's like, "Where are you?" And then you just cut to her behind the bridge. It's like, I can't get anywhere.
I really
Just 'cause,
like the
like,
scene where they're being chased by the police, since like everything's gone AWOL. So they shoot down the bridge because they're expecting like the army to like appear on the other side, and then they just destroy the bridge and everyone like goes falling down, and Kanaka's like fucking idiots.
a lot of good bridge-based comedy, I guess we're saying.
a bit that stuck
Um,
out to me is, of all places, actually episode 4. You know, Lugia's favorite. That's at the end. That's at the end of the episode where they reveal basically everything that was going on and how it was all basically a setup, and the captain admits it, and they just start chucking all the evidence at him, like the mask, like the drink, like I don't know, that just cracked me up.
all right. Want to talk about the movie now?
Sure.
All right, so the Patlabor movie was released in 1989. It actually was released 1 month after the show ended. So I guess they were working on it simultaneously. It was directed by Mamoru Oshii, written by Kazunori Ito, which is the same as the OVA. And yeah, it's meant to be a sequel. So set in 1999, Tokyo is undergoing a huge redevelopment program. And okay, I'll be honest. This movie was basically just made because they want to have two Patlabors fight each other. They thought that'd be cool. I would say this is definitely where you can start seeing like Oshi's usual style start to like bleed in, because there's a lot of biblical references, and while it's still like for the most part pretty in line with the OVA, you can definitely see that like Oshi's starting to leak more of his own personal tendencies in it. He reused a lot of concepts from this Lupin the Third movie he was working on that ended up getting canceled. Where that was going to be like Lupin discovering the Tower of Babel. So they started like some of the research he did, regarding the Tower of Babel was going to put in here, and I'm sure you probably picked up on that.
Did he ever do anything regarding Evangelion?
No, but he was contemporaries. Like, one day I'm going to talk about Gunbuster on this show, and you're going to be like, man, this is definitely like the Patlabor to all those Ghosts in the Shell. So I guess going to the plot, a bunch of laborers used in Tokyo, specifically those built by Shinohara Heavy Industries, are suddenly going active and going haywire, even when unpiloted. And yeah, they're basically assigned to neutralize the malfunctioning laborers, but only the SV2's Division 2 is on duty around the clock, with Division 1 already in training duties elsewhere. But anyway, as Division 2 goes in the field, they discover that all the manufacturing laborers, plus other laborers, were equipped with this new hyper operating system, HOS. Yeah, which is an issue. Now, to the SV2's, relief, none of the copies of the software installed on their laborers, but to add a classic sort of noir twist to the thing, the guy who programmed the HOS committed suicide days before, and he was obsessed with the Babylon project, biblical references, the Ark, being alluding to Noah's Ark, for example. In fact, Oshii actually decided to sort of throw in a bunch of like biblical imagery and references in here, because he was like, yeah, we named our main character Noah. We can maybe like do a Noah's Ark type thing, which is why they toss in a bunch of like the Ark and Tower of Babel stuff in here. Jehovah, that's another one. Each Eoba is Jehovah. So yeah, he planted a self-replicating virus in the code that would cause the labors to malfunction. So computer simulation predicts that the gale force winds acting in the Ark could send all the laborers into a massive rampage, especially since the Ark's size and steel framework amplifies like the frequencies, causing it to reach further than the city. And then the Weather Bureau announces that a typhoon is expected to hit Tokyo within 2 days. So they really ramp up the stakes there. And yeah, so they get clearance to destroy the Ark. Kanuka loses control over the typo and the chaos, and because it runs on HOS as well. And we have this big, epic climax, sort of labor on labor violence. And yeah, it's pretty cool. What did you think of Lugia?
I thought it was fine. I'm gonna be real. I don't have much to say on the movie because it definitely does feel like an extension to Patlabor as a series. This feels more like it's in line with the Pokemon movies, where it's extra stuff for you to like get your fill on if you really like the OVA and the other shows. But on its own, it's not really going to do much for you. Patty, you said that you really liked the mech fights in the OVA, right? And you wanted more of them? This is not going to help with that because there are only 2 mech fights across its 1 hour 40-minute runtime. One at the very beginning with a labor that's gone haywire because of HOS, and then at the very end with the whole operation and Alphonse fighting Type Zero. Everything else in between.
You probably really like the climax though, because the
climax is great, yes,
climax.
But it takes so fucking long to get there, like an uncomfortably long amount of time, because everything in between is just trying to figure out the connections between HOS and the guy who killed himself, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's basically like a classic noir mystery. And then at the end, they just put in just like as much fucking fan service as they can. Like, it's very clear they just want to make a noir mystery, but at the end, they're like, all right, we need to give the people what they want. Not only are we going to have them just fight a bunch of robots, we're going to have the laborers fight each other. Like, it's kind of funny. Where like it feels like you're watching like the Maltese Falcon for like half the runtime, and then at the end, it's just like a giant, just like mech fight.
Would you say it's worth sitting through all of it to get to that fight?
Not really.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I liked it. I thought it was. I mean, have you seen the Cowboy Bebop movie?
I haven't seen anything Cowboy Bebop.
Okay,
Okay.
well, one,
I don't
we
know
gotta
if
fix that, and two, I don't think the Cowboy Bebop movie as a comparison really helps. So one of my main gripes with something like this, and the Pokemon movies, is that they kind of already expect you to know the characters as people, like from the show. Whereas with the Cowboy Bebop movie, it does a much better job letting you know who these characters are, what their motivations
okay.
are.
Yes, the Cowboy Bebop movie is like better like for beginners, but like I still think like for the most part, it just feels like an extended episode. And I remember I thought like the actual plot of the Cowboy Bebop movie was kind of like I don't know whatever,
But at the very
but
least,
like
you
it was
can
fun.
watch the Cowboy Bebop movie and still understand our protagonists. Whereas here, you already need to have Patlabor OVA or whatever else. Again, I haven't seen like the other Patlabor stuff, but like whatever else that you need in order to enjoy this film to understand these characters. And there's a lot more here than there are in Cowboy Bebop.
You'll definitely love the how it's animated though, because this is gorgeous.
Oh, it looks.
I
This
don't
movie
think.
looks great.
Also, he really loves to use the wide angle lenses in this one. You know, it's funny you asked if like this guy is worked on Evangelion because like almost everyone I talk to who's seen this movie feels like this feels like the guy who made Evangelion directed it. Like it's just funny that like, you noticed it because I didn't even know you watched Evangelion.
I haven't watched Evangelion. I just know of it.
Okay, yeah. Well, you're not the only person to make the comparison. Everyone's like, man, this kind of feels like Anno directed it.
When you're talking about mecha anime, everything's always going to come back to Evangelion because that's like the definitive mecha.
I mean, Gundam is a definitive mecha, but yeah. I mean, to be fair, like Patlabor is definitely much closer to Evangelion in terms of mecha than Gundam because you know Evangelion is like people fighting in cities and stuff, when Gundam is more space opera. But I don't know, like to me, I kind of liked it just because like the initial draw to Patlabor for me was like kind of like you know the sort of bureaucracy and just sort of like the meat and potatoes like investigation thing. Like, have you seen Shin Godzilla?
Yes.
Did this remind you like of Shin Godzilla at all?
Not
Like with
really.
like
I'm gonna be real. I don't remember much about Shin Godzilla, and it's been a while since I saw it.
okay, well that one's actually directed by I don't know who made Evangelion, but like this kind of reminds me of Shin Godzilla in a way. You know, not just because it's directed by Anno, but because yeah, you know how you mentioned how like you know there's not much fights or anything like that. Like Shin Godzilla is kind of like similar to me because like it's a Godzilla movie, but for the most part, there's not like a ton of like real Godzilla-y stuff in it. It's like you're mostly just following the bureaucrats trying to figure it out. And to me, there's kind of like a similar element here where it's mostly like meat and potatoes, like police stuff, and then like you know we actually get kind of like the I guess unique element only in like sort of the climactic elements and whatnot, and it's kind of a political thriller almost in a way, and like just a little bit funnier. I'd say like Patlabor in general has like a very like sort of unique tone as a series. Like I wasn't really thrown off by this just because like you know the first two episodes was like practically you know procedural stuff, and then we got like more serious stuff in like the second half of the series, and it's like I don't know. I feel like this kind of like fit my expectations of what a Patlabor movie would be like. I am very interested in seeing what you guys would think of the sequel because I do not. The sequel doesn't have like more action, but it does have much heavier themes. Like it's very like Metal Gear Solid in a way, but like it's not like funny or anything. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like
It takes itself
it was.
seriously.
It takes itself a lot more seriously. And I don't think it's gonna scratch like the action itch for you because for the most part, like the stuff that stood out to me about the second movie is just like their conversations about like war and politics and stuff. So like yeah,
Do they tell
that's
Noah
gonna
to
be
turn the
interesting.
game console off?
No, nothing like that. But it's like very like you know how like in Metal Gear Solid 2, like they have these like long conversations about like you know
April 30th.
like war and you know technology and stuff. Like there's a kind of similar thing. The standout scene in the second Patlabor movie to me is this one scene where they're talking about how Japan is effectively like a puppet state of the United States, and how you know we have these peace and we get to claim peace, and even almost admonish like these countries for the war, but for the most part we do ultimately kind of profit from the war machine in a way, even though like we are not active participants in it. And I was like, wow, this is really fucking heavy and not what I expected from Patlabor, but also it's exactly what I expect from the guy who directed Ghost in the Shell. So like it was kind of interesting. I was watching this, it was like this is just not at all the movie I expected. And like yeah, I guess that's the best way I could describe the Patlabor series. That is it is never what I expect. And I've kind of just gone into like the Patlabor series as like not expecting what I expect. And that's honestly like made me enjoy the series a lot more. So I don't know. I feel like if you just kind of like
Fair
let it
enough. I
wash over,
mean,
it's more enjoyable.
this was a bit different than what I was expecting. So, were you
Like
expecting anything different, Lugia?
Well, I would like to see that second movie just to get a taste of how far this rabbit
uh
hole can go, but
This first movie is definitely one I want to like rewatch again because like there are so many like biblical references on these like little political statements that like it feels like this movie is a lot more layered than it is, even though it does. You know, I do agree that it does kind of just feel like a Pokemon movie in a sense, but like I don't know. Even like some of the Pokemon movies, I do feel like there's like something more going on under the hood, and that's kind of what I feel like here. But yeah, I will say it definitely does like get off to a slow start, but I do think it's a pretty like solid police procedural, and it's got like a lot going on thematically. But if you want like an action movie, I wouldn't say it's like really much of an action movie. It's definitely much more of like a political thriller or like a police procedural than an action flick. And again, and like it's talking about the Tower of Babel, you know, Noah's Ark, pagan idols, but it's still like presented in this very classic sort of way. So yeah, good atmosphere. I really like the atmosphere of this movie. I feel like because the show is a bit more sitcom, it didn't get to like really soak in the atmosphere as much. But here I definitely feel like because it takes it a bit slow, there's a nice sort of mood to it all. I like that.
So I guess as a whole, we enjoyed our time with Patlabor for the most part.
For the
Yeah,
most
I
part.
definitely say I'd give both of them a thumbs up. Although I will say that like don't go in expecting anything. Just sort of like embrace what's being shown because I
Let
don't
it
think
work
like
its
you're gonna
magic.
get what you expected. Yeah, it's never gonna be what you think it's gonna be. It's definitely more enjoyable on rewatch just because like once you know what you're getting, you can kind of like appreciate a lot of the elements a lot more.
I definitely recommend the OVA. The first movie, it's fine. I didn't think it was anything that special. But if you don't want to wade through all of the noir elements, if that's not your thing, then try to find a clip of the final fight because that shit's amazing.
I too would
I think
give
the
the
movie is
OVA a recommendation. I can't speak for the movie, but I tell you what, if we ever return to Patlabor in the future, I'll give it a watch.
I recommend both. I still think people should give the whole movie a shot just because I do think there's a lot going on it. It's probably better on rewatch than first watch because like first watch, it's very. I will say like it's kind of like disorienting when you first watch it because it's like it definitely makes you think it's going to be much more of like a classic sort of 80s action movie or whatever, and then it ends up just kind of being very odd. It
Yeah,
reminds me of like when I
I
first
definitely had
watched.
those expectations going in. It didn't help that I watched it late at night.
It reminds me of when I watched the Maltese Falcon, which is a movie I'm pretty lukewarm on. But I remember like I went in expecting something very different, and then I got like this a very different thing. I will say, ironically, the Patlabor movie is a lot more of what I wanted from the Maltese Falcon because the Maltese Falcon is mostly just a bunch of guys talking in different rooms, and I was like, huh. You know, for a noir thing, I thought this would be more exciting, and like it is like a pretty good thing. It's just like it's not like the most like visually engaging, but here I definitely say it is visually engaging. It's just it's very much like a slow burn. Maybe I should have told you guys, like, I don't know, going expecting more Chinatown than whatever. Like, obviously, like, I'd say Chinatown is probably much more, like, immediately engaging than this, but, like, I definitely say it feels more like Chinatown than, like, the rest of the episodes of the show. I'm not going to say it's not for everyone, because I do think everyone can find something to enjoy, but it's definitely, like, an acquired taste in a way. There's something that's immediately going to grab everyone, but there's also going to be something that's going to, like, maybe take a second for them. And this applies to the OVA, too. So next week,
So I wanted to go to a straight up comedy for next week. And it's a movie that I've been interested in watching for a while now. I just never got around to watching it until now. You guys probably have seen it though. So for next week, we are talking about 2007's Superbad.
I
Ah,
knew when you said 2007 was gonna be super bad. Ah, hell yeah! Oh, this is gonna be a fun episode. Hell yeah!
actually, I haven't seen this movie.
Oh,
I've
you
definitely
haven't?
heard of it. No, I've
Yeah.
definitely heard of it, absolutely, but no,
So
never seen it for myself.
this is probably gonna come off as shocking because I've made like disses towards Seth Rogen like before. Like I definitely have like established myself as Seth Rogen hater. I love Superbad. I think it's like one of the funniest comedies ever made. At least the McLovin parts is like the funniest comedy ever made. All right. Well, that's it for the episode. If you like Patlabor, check out Oshi's other stuff. Check out maybe Gunbuster, some of Ano's stuff. But yeah, that's it. I don't know how to close it off. Signing off for duty, I guess.